Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and this is Radioland, my international radio trends newsletter from radioland.email. And this podcast is sponsored by rss.com. If you don't want ads in here, then that's cool. You can get rid of them in Apple Podcasts by following the link to become a supporter and listen ad-free. I start with a full story all about Australia's remote mines. Yes, they have lots of FM radio stations in the middle of nowhere, it turns out. A question from a Radioland supporter, Daffith, led me to learning all about Newman Area C. I thoroughly enjoyed learning more about that. You can become a supporter at buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland and drop me an email with anything interesting that you might spot. Also, another full story that I linked to from the newsletter today. How does radio on Google speakers work? Last time in the newsletter, I wrote about Radio National, which has stopped working on Google speakers. I dug around a bit to learn about how it worked, talked with somebody, and good news, it worked perfectly for 3 days, and now it's stopped working again. I found out how it works, though, who actually sets those stations, and I give it a go with the rest of the radio stations on the Brisbane dial, and it's not particularly good. Now, last week, Josh Fawaz's Like a Prayer got just 3 plays on UK radio, 5 plays on US radio, just 1 spin in New Zealand. But in his home country of Australia, it's the most played song, 2,761 plays, according to Radio Monitor. It's been heard on Nova, Fox, Kiss, Hit, Star, and even in store in Woolworths and Bunnings. But the song appears to be AI. Nobody's saying anything on the radio, though, and why would they? Because last year, one station slung an AI voice on as a mid-morning radio DJ for 6 months without telling anybody, and the continued presence of 2 separate stations claiming that they're Brisbane's #1 hit music station seems to rather ably demonstrate that the Australian commercial radio industry thinks audiences aren't worthy of any respect anyway. But that coincides with the BBC releasing its policy on the use of AI in music. The corporation says that disclosure is important, and that priority will be music which is the result of meaningful human creativity. Now that's how you do it. Only last week I was expressing concerns about Canadian radio's viability. It took just a few days for Rogers to demonstrate that, abruptly taking 6 radio stations off air in 4 Canadian cities and announcing the loss of 230 jobs. In Vancouver, it's the end of Sportsnet 650 and News 1130. The stations have already closed. Rogers have just handed the licences back to the CRTC. In a country more sensibly regulated, Rogers would at least have looked for a buyer for these stations and perhaps help the employees to still have a job. But the CRTC's ownership rules in Canada don't allow radio companies to own more than a small number of stations, so the number of potential buyers is limited. And naturally, only Canadians can own a radio station there. Plus, a sale of a radio station is a long, drawn-out process taking more than 9 months of CRTC deliberation. Bell announced plans to sell 45 stations in February 2024. The CRTC took more than 10 months to approve the first sale, and up to a further 3 months to approve the rest. A delay unthinkable in most parts of business. The shuttering of these radio stations should give the CRTC concern, but I fear it won't. As media companies continue to merge with each other, a brilliant clip from David Letterman that I linked to in the newsletter version of this, radioland.email, from General Electric's purchase of NBC in 1986, where he goes to give them a fruit basket to hilarious consequences. And a radio producer for more than 38 years at ABC Radio Sydney has retired. It's a really nice piece. It's well worth a peek. It's all part of the community of common interest for those radio station listeners. I am speaking next at Radio Days Asia in Jakarta in Indonesia. You should go. RadioDaysAsia.com is where to buy tickets for that. I'll be keynoting on radio's international trends and its future. Also, I'm speaking, hopefully, at Podcast Movement in New York City between September the 14th and the 18th. I'll certainly be there anyway, so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you to the many supporters of this newsletter, including Brunn Audio Consulting, Soma FM, Radio King, RSS.com and Radio Today from the UK, plus Dafydd Furnham, Marty from New York, Gavin Watson, Greg Strassel, Sam Phelps, Richard Hilton, Emma Gibbs, Jocelyn Abbey and James Masterton for being regular supporters. You can join them. buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland is where to become a member, to give regularly or just give a one-off coffee or 5. And there's a newsletter version of this newsletter, obviously, if you want that, radioland.email. I'm on Mastodon, james@bne.social if you're there as well, and my website has more details about who I am, what I do, and whether I can help you further. You'll find that at james.cridland.net. And until next time, keep listening.